Let's start from a conservative's perspective. What should a conservative find intriguing about the man, RFK Jr.?
He represents in many ways something that's nearly, how would you say, gone from American life, which is this post-war liberalism that we associate with, the 1950s and 1960s. He's very nostalgic for that period of American history, and not just that period, but as that generation of liberals was, he's also nostalgic for the founding. uh, uh, when I heard his announcement speech when he was in Boston that day, I was really struck by how much the speech was spent teaching people about the founding period, about the Boston Tea Party, about the Midnight Riot of Paul Revere, about the Bill of Rights and our history. And it was a strange experience because, I mean, for one thing, you don't usually expect a national politician to know enough about American history to talk about it with any degree of erudition. There's that. But there's the other thing is that we're coming out of this period of, 3.5 years of really just unbelievable amount of social, political, and cultural chaos. And I think what this period of American history has done is it's kind of wiped out our memories. I mean, we don't have a sense that we should be attached to who we are as a people, our purpose as a nation, our roots as a community. Our museums are all woke now. Smithsonian's taken down all of its cool exhibits and replaced them with a bunch of goofy exhibits. Even the things like Monticello and some of the other founding fathers' homes, are now just lectures of woke ideology. You can't even feel pride in our history. Even the date 1776 is being taken away from us by the New York Times and being replaced by 1619 and so on. So we're going through this period of, like, I don't know, compulsory amnesia. And so RFK for us, I mean, he clearly sees it's important for us to understand who we are and what makes us unique as a nation. And he finds himself in this sort of pedagogical role of teaching Americans about themselves. And I think from a conservative point of view, this is extremely important. I mean, we can't actually rebuild this country until we remember, who we are and where we came from, and what the roots of American liberty really are, and what the Constitution means, and how many generations struggled to get us here. So in a funny way, he's a bit of a blast from the past and a good reminder of the richness of American political life until, I don't know when you want to say it came to an end, but a few decades ago. But certainly after World War
I,
II, you had a
I'm
political
so
consensus in this country.
sorry. I don't mean to interrupt. I want to say I'm
Yeah.
so glad you answered the question that way,
Hmm.
from a big picture, principled perspective, as opposed to simply a policy
Hmm.
answer. And maybe I'll ask you that too, because that's something. But I'm
Yeah.
so glad you answered it that way instead. I'd expect nothing less for you. That's why I'm so grateful you're here. Because I remember he was. I watched his speech that he gave at the censorship committee that they tried to censor him from, and
Yeah.
he talked about how YouTube cut him off as soon as he was reciting the poem about Paul Revere's Midnight Ride that I believe he said his grandmother required all the Kennedy children and grandchildren to take the tour all across Boston. I don't know if they did it every year or often, but it was like ingrained in them as young children how
Yeah.
important our nation's founding is to us. And
Yeah.
that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, he comes from a generation that was raised very differently from kids today. I mean, even the other day, I was going through some of the old books called the Hardy Boys. I don't know if you've ever heard them, but they were
Yeah, yes, of
really
course.
popular. And the thing that struck me about the books was their erudition. There's a very high vocabulary. I mean, words that I'm even afraid to use in print because I'm afraid people can't understand them. I mean, this is an extremely well educated generation coming out after the Second World War with a real passion for civics education and a firm belief in the universal dignity of every citizen of the United States and their right and obligation to be as well educated as possible. So that he sort of represents that in all these sort of interesting nostalgic ways, and he firmly believes that we can get it back with the right steps, and that to me that's just tremendously inspiring. And in that sense, he represents a kind of conservatism you don't get very much of on the right today, with all the rabble rousing and populism. It's like, well, what is our nation? What is the character of our nation? What's the character of our people? What is it we're going for? And until we have a clear conception of that, we're going to make missteps, even with getting into power. So, in a sense, RFK's presence is built on the right kind of nostalgia, for a better time, really. And I don't mean the 80s or even the 70s. I mean like the 50s and the early 60s. And I think this stems from his actual firm conviction that his uncle's death, which happened, before I was born, but was a kind of a turning point in our nation's history from which we've never healed. Like he really fundamentally, he believes this, and my perception of him is that he feels like the country went really wrong at that point, and he's determined to, how would you say, avenge his uncle's killing by a restorative, almost spiritual sort of movement in this country.
Hey, we just finished up a wonderful special on RFK Jr. with three questions. First of all, who are the Kennedys? Like, why does the Kennedy name matter with this resurgence of like a third generation, fourth generation Kennedy? So what's the significance of that? Also, why do the Democrats not like him? He's only polling about 15% nationwide. Why isn't it higher than that if he's an old school Kennedy Democrat? And then thirdly, what could a conservative find appealing or charming about RFK Jr.? We talk about all those things for supporters only, thefirsttv.com/support.